ARD LPAC Collaboration and Compliance. This presentation will address the process for ARD LPAC Committee collaboration for students receiving special education services. It will specifically address the process for identification, entry, and exit into a bilingual or ESL program, as well as guidance for documentation within the IEP to ensure compliance. The first part of this presentation will focus on the ARD LPAC entry process for students receiving special education services. The process begins when a home language survey indicates that the language spoken at home and by the student is in English and any other language, or not English language. The student is assessed using the pre-LOS for pre-K, LOS links for grades K through 1, or LOS links in ITBS for grades 2 through 12. Once results are received, an LPAC meeting is held within 4 calendar weeks of initial enrollment. An ARD committee representative is required to be in attendance. If the student's ability in English is so limited or the student's disabilities are so severe that the assessment cannot be administered, the student will be identified as an English learner. Next, the results of the assessment and the LPAC committee recommendations for entry into a bilingual education or ESL program are reviewed and finalized at a formal ARD meeting for those students identified as ELs. The ARD committee will determine and document in the IEP all services to be provided. An LPAC representative is required to be in attendance. To prepare for the ARD meeting, a written notice of the ARD meeting found in SEEDS must be provided to the parent at least 5 school days in advance of the proposed meeting date. The purpose of the meeting on the meeting notice in SEEDS will be review LPAC ARD recommendations, and the reason actions proposed will be consider entry into a bilingual education or ESL program. Language needs and services will be documented on the language page within the ARD and SEEDS. The ARD committee will also determine and document the TELPAS assessment recommendations. The next part of this presentation will focus on the ARD LPAC reclassification collaboration process for students taking STAR Alt 2. The required reclassification criteria established by TEA applies to the vast majority of ELs who receive special education services. In rare cases, an EL receiving special education services may qualify to be reclassified by taking the TELPAS Alternate assessment. This would only apply to ELs with significant cognitive delays designated to take the STAR Alt 2, or students in grade 2 who meet the TEA TELPAS Alternate assessment eligibility requirements. For students meeting these requirements, an informal ARD LPAC meeting is held to determine if the TELPAS is an appropriate assessment for determining reclassification. The required meeting participants include the LPAC chair, the bilingual or ESL teacher, and a special education instructional representative. This meeting is held during the fall semester or at the end of the year to be applied to the next school year. At the informal ARD LPAC meeting, participants discuss the second language acquisition of the student within the context of the individual student's disability to consider the appropriateness of the assessment to be used for reclassification. Consideration must be IEP-based and must include documented evidence that, because of the nature of the student's disability, the student is not expected to be able to attain English language proficiency in one or more domains, and no longer appears to benefit from second language acquisition support in English to address second language acquisition cognitive, linguistic, and affective needs, or is expected to reach that point during the school year. Evidence must include both historical formal and informal assessment data and direct teacher input. The input of a diagnostician may be requested as necessary to help determine whether special reclassification criteria is warranted. The evidence, recommendation, assessments, and appropriate performance standard requirements are documented within the informal ARD LPAC meeting form in SEEDS. If, after reviewing the evidence, the meeting participants conclude that the student no longer benefits from second language acquisition support in English, or is expected to reach that point during the school year, and determine that the TELPAS Alternate is the appropriate assessment, the participants must determine the appropriate performance standard requirements for reclassification on a domain-by-domain basis. Next, the documentation is presented at a formal ARD meeting and the IEP is updated with the TELPAS Alternate exit criteria if the ARD committee determines that exit is anticipated. The information entered into the informal ARD LPAC form will copy to the formal ARD draft under the ARD LPAC Modified Criteria tab and will be filed along with the IEP. The purpose of this meeting on the meeting notice and seeds will be review LPAC ARD recommendations, and the reason actions proposed will be consider modified reclassification criteria. Like the informal meeting, this formal ARD meeting must occur during the fall semester or at the end of the year to be applied to the next school year. At the end of the school year, an LPAC meeting is held to review all information and decide if the student has met the reclassification criteria. This is documented in LPAS and must be done prior to closing of the annual review window as per the multilingual education team timelines. If reclassification criteria are met, the LPAC will determine if the student will be recommended for exit from a bilingual or ESL program. A formal ARD meeting must be held for any special education student who has been recommended for exit. This ARD meeting is held for those students who have met the TEA required reclassification criteria or modified reclassification criteria and have been recommended for exit from a bilingual or ESL program. The purpose of the meeting on the meeting notice and seeds will be review LPAC ARD recommendations, and the reason actions proposed will be consider exit from a bilingual education or ESL program. This ARD meeting is required in order to recommend the L special education student for exit from bilingual or ESL services. At the ARD meeting, document the final recommendation to exit the student from bilingual or ESL services by completing the ARD LPAC exit page in seeds. Important reminders. Once an L-identified student is also served by special education, the LPAC representative, ESL or bilingual teacher, must attend all ARD meetings as a member of the committee. Additionally, an ARD committee member must attend all LPAC meetings. The LPAC representative may also serve as the regular education teacher or the special education teacher on the ARD committee if appropriately qualified. ARD and LPAC committees must work together in order to coordinate their timelines. ARD and LPAC meetings occur not only to facilitate entry and exit out of the respective programs, but also to review progress, determine linguistic accommodations that will help the student access the general curriculum, and to make decisions regarding the educational needs of the student. A written notice of ARD meeting found in seeds must be provided to the parent at least 5 school days in advance. The informal ARD LPAC meeting document remains unofficial until the formal ARD meeting is held and the IEP is finalized. L students with significant cognitive delays who meet eligibility requirements for STAR Alt 2 or students in grade 2 who meet TELPAS Alt eligibility requirements are the only students eligible for special or modified reclassification criteria as deemed appropriate by the ARD committee. ARD decisions relating to exit from a bilingual education or ESL program must be documented by the LPAC. For additional information and resources, please visit the AISD Special Education website, accessible through the cloud. ARD LPAC information can be found under the ARD tab.